Welcome, Morehill students, to Keep It Real. I'm Mrs. Miller.
And I'm Mrs. Knight.
In our previous episode of Keep It Real, we talked about the importance of planning for your future after high school with a career coach from Thomas Nelson. Today, we have another special guest from the Army Reserves. Please welcome Aaron Blount to share his insight on the reserves and his experiences. Some of you may be thinking, I know him. Well, you do. He is no stranger to war hell. He was a school counselor here a few years ago. Thank you, Mr. Blount, so much for your service and for joining us today.
Welcome, Mr. Blount. We're so excited to have you with us. Our students have so many choices when it comes to joining our military. Can you share the differences between Army Reserves, ROTC, and enlisting?
So, well, I guess I'll say it's three different components for the Army. You have, two different components. You have active duty, and then you have reserve as well. And the easiest way to differentiate between the two is active duty is full-time, and reserve is part-time, where you drill 2 times out of the month and maybe 1 to 2 weeks out of the year. I'm in the reserve component. As far as enlisted and ROTC, well, I guess I'll start with how I got in. I joined straight out of high school. I enlisted in the reserves. My parents gave me 3 options: get a job, go to college, or join the Army. All 3 required me to get out the house. So I decided to go to college, but I didn't have any scholarships. So the reserves offered a lot of different options as far as paying for school. So I went the reserve route. After finishing undergrad, I got a degree in psychology, and anybody that's got a psychology degree knows that you have to get a degree in something else to get a job. So I used all of my reserve benefits. So I looked into ROTC, which also offered benefits for school. So I went from a reservist to ROTC, which is partnered with school. So while you're in your college program, you're also in ROTC. So you do both simultaneously. And I did that to get my master's degree. So yeah, not to ramble too much, because I think I got away from the question.
You explained it really well, and I didn't know that you had done both ROTC and reserves. So that's cool for
Yes.
students to know that too. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Mr. Blount, you kind of answered my question with your previous answer. I was going to ask if you could tell us a little bit about your decision to join the Army Reserves while you were in college, but can you tell me a little bit about your experience in that?
About ROTC while I was in college?
Yeah.
Well, I would say it was a good experience. It was tough. And I'll say because I was in a grad program, so you have to couple that with grad level work and still having to do ROTC related activities as well. But it taught me how to, balance and schedule things and, be on top of things. But I will also say, it's a lot of different options as well in ROTC. And I went with the GRFD scholarship, which is Guaranteed Reserve Forces, something else. It's too many acronyms in the Army, but it's the Guaranteed Reserve Forces scholarship, where you essentially say that you'll join the reserves and they'll pay for you to go to school, or they'll pay for your housing. And out of the two, you get the most money for tuition. So I decided to have them pay for me to go to school. But my experience was pretty good. They paid for me to go to school, and then I picked up a lot of different traits that carry into, actual life, as far as being able to schedule, being professional, and taking care of things on time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sounds like you have an amazing career in the Army Reserve. So how has being in the Army Reserve impact your life?
I'll say it's given me a lot of different options as far as making decisions. What am I looking for? I'm trying to stay on track and not jump around too much. But I guess I'll start with undergrad. When I enlisted as a reservist, I had a few different things available to me, and I guess I'll just go down the list of what they were. So when you enlist as a reservist, I'm not sure if it's the same now, but I'm pretty sure it's similar. But going in, I had access to student loan repayment, GI Bill, which is a monthly stipend. What else did they give me? A sign-in bonus as well. So it gave me the option to take on, if it didn't cover all of my schooling, I had more of an option to not take on as much debt. And if it did cover everything, and undergrad, it did cover everything. But if I did decide to take on some debt, I could be more, I could have more of an option of what I decided to take on. So I would say it gave me options as far as how it impacted my decision-making coming out of high school.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to a high school student who is considering joining the military? I know we used you a lot when you were here at War Hill to give advice and do everything military. But
Mm-hmm.
if you had a student coming to you and asking you, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say, when you talk to a recruiter, don't be afraid to ask questions. Because when you enlist, or if you decide to do ROTC, in exchange for the benefits that they offer, you're agreeing to, provide a service or join the service. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And I know at War Hill is a few other people that were in the service, to use them as options or mentors as well if you have questions. Because I remember when I was counseling there, a lot of the students were afraid to ask questions to the recruiter, but they would come to me and, ask some of those questions that were really important to ask. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions.
So what can you give us an example of the type of questions that students should be asking?
Well, okay. So coming out of high school, when I enlisted, I went over some of the benefits that I got, but I didn't know how to use them. So when I went to VSU, I went expecting for my tuition to be covered. And when I got there, that wasn't the case, because I had to do a bunch of paperwork and submit things to different entities. And I ended up having to sit out for a year because I didn't know that. So, they may tell you have these benefits, but maybe how do I use these benefits? Is the tuition going to be paid all up front? I found that out the hard way is with the student loan repayment, they don't pay it all out from the very beginning. They pay it over a course of years until you run out of student loan repayment. So, just the intricate details of what you're getting and how it works.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Mr. Blount. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to our students.
Yep, no problem.
It was nice to see you.
It was good to see you all too.
Thank you.
And I'll say this too: if students oh, you stopped already?
Oh, did I stop?
I think it says it's still
This
recording.
recording.
I'm recording.
Okay.
Yeah. So if students do have questions and they want to ask me, they can email me at aaron.j.blunt4@gmail.com. That's aaron.j.blount4@gmail.com. But yeah, if they got questions, they can ask me. But also use some of the resources that you all have at the school. Is Mr. King still there?
Yes.
And Dee Dee still there too?
Yep.
Yep, Miss Garner, excuse me. But is a few people there that have been in the service too. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And you might not, know what questions to ask, but by having that conversation with somebody who's been in the service, they may be able to tell you what questions you need to be looking into. So yeah, I would say that as advice as well. Just, you might not know what questions to ask, but you'll figure out what to ask by having conversations with people who've been in the shoes already.
Fact. Serving in the military isn't a prerequisite for becoming the President of the United States. But did you know 29 out of 45 of our presidents have military experience in their background?
Thank you, Mr. Blount, for your service and for sharing your experience with our War Hill students. If you have any questions about the Army Reserves or any other military service, please reach out to your school counselor and we can connect you with one of our awesome military recruiters. Until next time, keep it real, War Hill!